electronic or artificial sensory systems which don't have this adaptability built into them so that they can be used for routine checking of the same thing again and again and again, which our biological systems are not that great at. So all of these receptors convey their information, because they're all on the outside, or at least they're away from the brain. They convey these to the brain via sensory nerves. And they do so in such a way that the pattern of activation, the capture of the energy, the pattern in your eye or your ear or your tongue, for example, or the receptors in your nose, that is faithfully maintained in the organization of these sensory nerve fibers, as well as thousands of them, all the way to the brain. So your brain ends up with a faithful, both spatial and temporal map of exactly what happened in the receptors in the periphery. So, as I said, the brain therefore ends up with a lovely, precise spatial and temporal map of what happened in each sense organ. But the interesting thing about it is that it's not all impinging on the same part of the brain. Each sensory system has its own sort of reception module in the brain. So vision is at the back here, for example. Touch is in this purple area here, the somatosensory cortex. Hearing is a tiny area down here, auditory cortex. Smell underneath here. And these are all, as I say, completely separate from one another. And just as with the receptors, what's important is that greater sensitivity results in more brain being devoted to the process of interpreting those signals. So there is a cost here. If you want to be very, very sensitive to something, you're going to have to end up dedicating a lot of very expensive brain tissue in terms of energy consumption to actually dealing with it. And okay, yes, there are parts of the brain, particularly in the front here, where everything comes together, or at least a number of senses come together, and that provides some form of integration. And they're particularly the ones that are close to the parts of the brain that are controlling memory and action. But you don't have to wait for the information to get there to be aware of it. That's the important take-home message. So it actually means that we end up with multiple centers of awareness. Each of our sensory systems is capable of being detected separately, physically separately by the brain. It's almost kind of schizophrenic kind of idea that it's not all unitarian. We have 5 or more different, if you like, levels of awareness, spatial awareness in the brain of the different forms of energy that are around us. And if you like to be a little bit sort of